October 26, 1881, Fremont Street, Tombstone, Arizona. Wyatt Earp, his brothers, and Doc Holliday walk toward 5 armed men, and they are not there to start a gunfight. They are there to enforce a city law that banned carrying guns in town. The most famous shootout in American history was not a duel between outlaws. It was lawmen trying to confiscate weapons. Hollywood never told you that part. Stick around, because that twist is just the beginning of 10 frontier survival secrets that modern comfort has erased from memory. And some of them work better than what you have in your kitchen cabinet right now. Number 10. Before there were hardware stores or home improvement chains, frontier settlers mixed their own mortar and plaster from nothing more than clay, sand, and dried grass. The grass wasn't filler. It was structural, the same principle behind modern reinforced concrete. The dried stalks bound the clay together and prevented cracking as the mixture dried and shifted through brutal temperature swings. Sod houses built with this method stood for decades across the Great Plains, sheltering families through blizzards and dust storms without a single manufactured material. The settlers didn't wait for supplies to arrive. They looked at the ground beneath their feet and built from it. Number 9. Out on the plains, a single spark could mean the difference between a hot meal and a frozen night. Pioneers carried a small tin packed with scraps of cotton or linen cloth. They sealed it nearly airtight and set it in the coals, starving the fabric of oxygen until it slowly cooked down into something called charcloth. The result was a fragile black material that could catch a single spark from flint and steel and hold a glowing ember for minutes, even in wind or drizzle that would snuff out a match instantly. The science is simple. Ordinary cloth needs intense heat to ignite, but charred cloth ignites almost on contact with a spark. That little tin in a saddlebag was a guaranteed fire, and a guaranteed fire was survival. Number 8. Nothing on a frontier homestead was ever thrown away, especially not fat. Families rendered animal fat slowly in cast iron pots until it became tallow, a substance that did the work of half a dozen modern products. It preserved meat sealed inside it for months. It softened and waterproofed leather boots and harnesses. It became the fuel for slush lamps, a twisted cotton wick floating in a dish of melted fat, lighting a cabin long after the sun went down. One pot of rendered fat could outfit an entire household through a brutal winter. Number 7. Long before there was a pharmacy on every corner, women on the frontier packed open wounds and burns with raw honey. It sounds primitive, but the chemistry holds up. Honey is naturally acidic and produces a slow release of hydrogen peroxide, creating an environment hostile to bacteria, while keeping the wound moist enough to heal without the dressing fusing to raw skin. This wasn't folk superstition. Egyptian medical texts described the same treatment thousands of years before a single wagon crossed the Mississippi. The frontier didn't invent it, it simply refused to let it die when modern medicine arrived. Number 6. There was no app, no radar, no 5-day forecast. A homesteader's life depended on reading the sky itself. A blood-red sunrise warned of moisture and wind on the way. A pale ring circling the moon meant high-altitude ice crystals were spreading ahead of an incoming storm system, often a full day before it hit. Settlers who ignored these signs lost livestock, lost crops, sometimes lost their lives caught out on open range. The sky was the only forecast they had, and they learned to read it the way we read a phone screen now. Number 5. Refrigeration on the frontier meant a wooden icebox and a block of ice hauled from a frozen pond or shipped in by rail, and ice was expensive. Families lined the inside walls of the box with layers of pressed newspaper. The trapped air pockets between the layers slowed the transfer of outside heat into the box, stretching the life of a single ice block by days. It's a principle every modern cooler still uses today, just with foam instead of yesterday's headlines. Number 4. In mining camps and farming settlements, A pot stayed on the fire constantly and it never fully emptied. Bones, vegetable scraps, and the day's leftovers went straight into the simmering broth. The constant low heat killed off bacteria before it could take hold, and the result was a daily meal that cost almost nothing and wasted nothing. I've looked at a lot of so-called modern food hacks, and frankly, the perpetual stock pot still outperforms most of them. It is zero-waste cooking that predates the term by more than a century. Number 3. Hard cash was scarce on the frontier, so entire communities ran on something far older than currency: trust. A farmer traded milk and butter for blacksmith repairs. A seamstress traded mended clothes for firewood. These barter webs kept whole towns functioning without a single coin changing hands, and they built something money never could: a community where your neighbor's survival was tied directly to your own. Number 2. Drought could kill a homestead faster than any outlaw. Settlers built cistern systems beneath or beside their cabins, channeling rainwater off the roof through gutters into sealed underground storage. When the well ran dry in the worst months of summer, that stored water kept a garden alive and livestock standing. It was infrastructure built by hand, with no utility company and no monthly bill attached to it, and it worked for decades. And before we get to the moment that started this whole story, there's one more skill worth mentioning. Number 1. Rope and cord were essential and often impossible to buy out on the range, so pioneers twisted their own from yucca fibers, plant stalks, even animal sinew, braiding them into cordage strong enough to repair a wagon wheel or lash together a shelter. It took patience, but it meant never being stranded without a single tool a store could sell you. Which brings us back to Tombstone. That ordinance from April of 1881 was blunt. Carry a deadly weapon inside city limits without a permit, and you faced a $250 fine or 30 days in jail. Visitors were expected to check their guns at the sheriff's office or a local hotel the moment they rode into town. The Clantons and McClorys refused to comply that October afternoon, and the attempt to disarm them is what triggered 30 seconds of gunfire that killed 3 men. Dodge City, Deadwood, and Abilene ran nearly identical laws. The wildest towns in American history were, on paper, some of the most heavily restricted. What actually kept people alive on the frontier wasn't a 6-shooter on every hip. It was a tin of charred cloth, a jar of honey, a watched sky, and neighbors who trusted each other enough to trade without a contract. That's the real Wild West, and it's worth remembering exactly as it happened.